Commander Vex Duran of the Galactic Hegemony's 7th Assault Fleet stretched his triple-jointed appendages and gazed through the viewport at the pitiful blue planet below. Earth, they called it. Such an uninspired name for such an uninspired species. Status report? He demanded, his mandibles clicking with impatience. Lieutenant Kraz scurried forward, datapad clutched in her primary hands while her secondary arms remained folded respectfully behind her thorax. The human defense grid is at 32% capacity, Commander. Their orbital platforms have been neutralized and ground-based installations are failing rapidly. Victory is inevitable. Inevitable. Victory was inevitable the moment our fleet entered this system. Vex laughed, a harsh, chittering sound that echoed across the command bridge. These humans, so fragile, so disappointing. The Council spent centuries fretting about the potential threat of this species. What a waste of resources. They have shown remarkable resilience, Kraz ventured cautiously. Vex swiveled his eye stalks toward his subordinate. Resilience? Is that what we are calling it now? 3 of their continents are in flames, their governments have collapsed, and their military forces are scattered. I call that pathetic. Yes, Commander. Bring up the feed from Sector 7. I want to see how our ground forces are progressing with the capture of their defense research facility. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a real-time feed from the surface. A squad of hegemony shock troopers were advancing through the smoking ruins of what had once been a high-security compound. Human bodies littered the ground, their red blood forming pools that steamed in the cold mountain air. "Any resistance?" Vex asked, already bored with the scenes of conquest. "Minimal, sir. A few pockets of human soldiers, but nothing our troops can't handle. Our intelligence suggests this facility houses experimental weapons technology, possibly including prototype shields that could withstand our bombardment." Vex snorted. Fat lot of good those prototypes did them. Where were these magical shields when we reduced their major cities to ash? Humans are all talk, Kraz. Remember that. The camera feed suddenly jolted as the trooper carrying it ducked behind a concrete barrier. Plasma fire erupted from somewhere off-screen, followed by the guttural shouting of human voices. "What's happening?" Vex demanded, his boredom instantly replaced by irritation. "It appears a small group of humans is making a stand at the central laboratory," Kraz replied, her voice betraying a hint of surprise. The feed stabilized, zooming in on the entrance to a reinforced structure. 3 humans in battle armor were positioned behind makeshift barricades, firing conventional projectile weapons at the advancing hegemony forces. 2 of them were male, but it was the third figure that caught Vex's attention. A female human, her armor cracked and scorched, stood slightly ahead of her companions. Unlike them, she wasn't firing wildly. Each shot from her weapon was deliberate, calculated, and effective. An uncomfortable number of hegemony soldiers lay motionless on the ground before her position. "Who is that?" Vex asked, leaning forward in his command chair. Kraz consulted her datapad. Facial recognition identifies her as Commander Tess Reeves, head of Earth's Adaptive Defense Research Division. She's responsible for developing most of their advanced weapons systems over the past decade. A weapons designer with actual combat skills. Unusual. Vex watched as the woman took down another trooper with a clean shot to the sensory cluster, but ultimately futile. He pressed a communication node on his chair. "Ground Commander Zhal, enough of this nonsense. Use the heavy weapons and be done with it." The response came back immediately. "Understood, Fleet Commander." On the screen, the camera panned back as the front line of troopers retreated. A moment later, a mobile artillery platform rolled into view, its main cannon already charging with a sickly green glow. "This should be amusing," Vex commented, settling back to enjoy the spectacle. The human commander, Reeves, seemed to recognize the threat immediately. She shouted something to her companions, who redoubled their fire in a desperate attempt to take out the artillery platform before it could discharge. Too late. The cannon fired, a blinding beam of concentrated plasma that reduced the barricades to molten slag in an instant. The two male humans simply ceased to exist, their bodies vaporized by the direct hit. Commander Reeves, slightly offset from the center of the blast, was thrown backward like a child's toy. The camera zoomed in as her body slammed against the laboratory wall with bone-crushing force, then crumpled to the ground in a broken heap. "Well, that's that," Vex said with satisfaction. "Secure the facility and bring any viable technology to the fleet." But on the screen, something unexpected was happening. The broken body of Commander Reeves was moving. "Is she still alive?" Vex asked incredulously. Kraz adjusted the feed, zooming in further. "It appears so, Commander. Humans have surprising endurance for such fragile creatures." The woman was dragging herself towards a small device that had fallen from her armor during the impact. Her face was a mask of blood. One arm hung uselessly at her side, and even through the grainy feed, it was obvious that her legs were no longer functioning properly. "Look at that pathetic display," Vex said, his voice now tinged with genuine amusement. "She thinks she can still fight? In that condition?" Around the command bridge, other officers had turned to watch the spectacle. Several began to laugh. "Should we order the troops to finish her?" Kraz asked. "No. Let's see what she thinks she's going to accomplish." "This is the most entertainment we have had all day." Vex raised his voice. "Bridge crew, place your bets. How far will she crawl before she expires?" "I put 50 credits on 3 more meters." A ripple of laughter spread through the bridge as officers called out their wagers. On the screen, Commander Reeves had reached the device and was fumbling with it one-handed, leaving smears of red on its metallic surface. "What is that thing she's so desperate to reach?" Vex asked, his curiosity piqued. Kraz zoomed the feed further. "It appears to be some sort of control device, Commander. Possibly a detonator for explosives within the facility." "Hey, is she planning to deny us the technology by destroying it? How predictably noble." Vex shook his head. "Ground forces. Be advised the human may be attempting to trigger a self-destruct mechanism." The troops on screen immediately scattered, taking cover behind whatever protection they could find. This only made Vex laugh harder. "Look at them, scared of a half-dead human with a little button. Pathetic." On the screen, Commander Reeves had finally managed to activate the device. A small light on its surface turned from red to green. She pressed it against her chest, directly over her heart. "What is she doing now?" Vex wondered aloud. "Some kind of suicide device?" The answer came a moment later, and it was nothing any of them had expected. The device seemed to liquefy, spreading across the human's torso like quicksilver. Within seconds, it had expanded to cover her entire body in a skin-tight metallic sheath. Where the suit covered her injuries, pulses of blue energy flashed beneath the surface. "What in the 7 hells is that?" Vex demanded, all trace of amusement gone from his voice. Before Kraz could respond, Commander Reeves stood up. Not the agonized crawl of a mortally wounded soldier, but a smooth, controlled movement that suggested her broken bones and internal injuries were no longer a concern. "Round Commander Jal," Vex barked into the comm. "What are you seeing down there?" The response was delayed, and when it came, Zhao's voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. "The human is changing, Commander. The suit appears to be some form of adaptive technology. It's integrating with her body." On screen, Reeves flexed her previously useless arm, now encased in the silvery material. When she turned toward the camera, her face was covered by a featureless mask of the same substance, with only 2 glowing blue points where her eyes should be. "Kill her. Now," Vex shouted, a strange feeling of dread building in his gut. The artillery platform swiveled its cannon toward Reeves and fired again. This time, however, something extraordinary happened. As the plasma beam reached her, the silvery suit seemed to absorb the energy, the entire surface of the armor momentarily glowing with the same sickly green. Then she moved. Later, when Vex tried to describe what he had witnessed, he found language inadequate. One moment, Commander Reeves was standing motionless, absorbing a blast that should have reduced her to atoms. The next, she was directly in front of the artillery platform, 30 meters away from her previous position. Her arm now transformed into something that resembled a blade more than a limb sliced through the cannon housing as if it were made of paper. The resulting explosion consumed both the platform and the troopers nearby in a fireball that temporarily whited out the camera feed. When the image stabilized, Commander Reeves stood alone amid the burning wreckage, completely unharmed. The silvery suit was now pulsing with veins of green energy, the same energy it had absorbed from the weapon. What is this technology?" Kraz whispered, her professional detachment cracking for the first time. Vex had no answer. Nothing in the hegemony's intelligence reports had suggested the humans possessed anything remotely like this. It was beyond advanced, it was practically arcane. On screen, Reeves turned her featureless face toward the camera. Somehow, despite the lack of visible eyes or mouth, the gesture conveyed a clear message: "I see you." Then she spoke, her voice transmitting through the trooper's comm system directly to the bridge. It was still recognizably human, but with an unsettling harmonic quality, as if multiple voices were speaking in perfect unison. "You should have finished the job, Commander Vex Duran," she said. "Now I'm going to show you what humanity is truly capable of." The feed cut out abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "How did she know my name?" Vex finally asked, his voice barely audible. Kraz was frantically consulting her datapad. "Unknown, Commander. Our communications are secure." There's no way she could have. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the bridge. The tactical display lit up with warning indicators as multiple systems reported breaches simultaneously. "What's happening?" Vex demanded, rising from his chair. "We are being hacked, Commander," the communications officer reported, his hands flying over his console. "Something is infiltrating our network at an impossible speed. Firewalls are collapsing. Security protocols are being bypassed as if they don't exist. Isolate the command systems. Shut down all external connections." "It's too late, sir. Whatever this is, it's already inside our network." The main view screen flickered and changed, displaying not the battlefield but the hegemony fleet in orbit. As they watched in horror, one of the smaller frigates suddenly exploded, its reactor core detonating in a brilliant flash of light. "Report," Vex shouted. "The Relentless, just, sir. Its containment fields collapsed and its weapons systems activated simultaneously. It's as if someone overrode all safety protocols at once." Another ship exploded, then another. On every screen across the bridge, the same message began to appear, written in the blocky script of the hegemony language. "You mocked what you didn't understand. Evacuate the ship," Vex ordered, his voice hollow. "All personnel to escape pods immediately." But even as he gave the command, he knew it was futile. Whatever force Commander Reeves had unleashed, it was moving too quickly to escape. The experimental suit hadn't just healed her, it had somehow connected her consciousness directly to the hegemony's network. She was inside their systems, inside their ships, inside their weapons. And she was angry. As the bridge crew scrambled in panic, Vex remained in his command chair, a strange calm settling over him. He had led the assault on this backwater planet, confident in the hegemony's technological superiority. He had laughed at the humans' desperate resistance, mocked their broken bodies. Now, as the lights on the bridge flickered and died, replaced by the eerie blue glow that had shone from Commander Reeves' eyes, Vex Duran understood his mistake. The hegemony hadn't been hunting a primitive species ripe for conquest. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. And it was only just beginning. The darkness on the bridge lasted only moments before emergency systems engaged, bathing the command center in dim crimson light. Commander Vex Duran gripped the arms of his command chair as his flagship, the inevitable Conquest, shuddered violently around him. "Damage report," he demanded, struggling to maintain his composure. Lieutenant Kraz had remained at her station while other officers fled. Multiple systems compromised, Commander. Weapon controls locked out. Engine throttles unresponsive. Life support functioning at minimal capacity. She paused, her compound eyes reflecting the emergency lights. Sir, I believe she's toying with us? Nonsense, Vex snapped, but without conviction. She's just one human with stolen technology she barely understands. The main view screen flickered back to life, but instead of showing the battle or even the bridge of another vessel, it displayed the interior of what appeared to be an elevator. Commander Reeves stood inside, her silvery suit now laced with pulsing veins of not just green but purple and blue energy as well. The featureless mask where her face should be tilted slightly, giving the impression she was studying a camera in the corner of the compartment. Is this broadcasting shipwide? She asked, her multi-toned voice sending chills through Vex's exoskeleton. No one on the bridge responded, but she nodded as if someone had answered. Good, I want everyone to see this. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a corridor filled with hegemony soldiers, weapons aimed directly at her. Without hesitation, they opened fire, filling the narrow space with a storm of plasma bolts and explosive projectiles. Commander Reeves didn't dodge. She didn't need to. Every shot that connected with her suit was simply absorbed, causing more energy to pulse through the silvery material. When the barrage paused as weapons overheated or required reloading, she stepped calmly into the corridor. My turn, she said. What followed was not combat in any conventional sense. It was execution. Reeves moved through the soldiers like water flowing around stones, each movement precise and economical. Where her hands touched weapons, they shorted out and fell useless to the floor. Where her fingers brushed against armored exoskeletons, hegemony troops collapsed as if their nervous systems had been overloaded. Not a single shot was fired from her side. She didn't need weapons. She had become one. This is impossible, Vex muttered, unable to tear his gaze from the screen. What kind of technology allows this? Kraz was frantically scrolling through data on her pad. Sir, I have accessed the secure files on the human research facility. Project Lazarus was apparently designed as a last-ditch defensive system. The suit Commander Reeves activated is a prototype nanite swarm programmed to repair catastrophic injuries, interface with technology, and adapt to any threat. Why haven't we encountered this before? Vex demanded. Our intelligence suggested humans were at least a century away from this level of advancement. According to these files, they were. The project was theoretical, deemed too dangerous to implement. Kraz looked up from her pad, her mandibles trembling slightly. Until we attacked. The invasion accelerated their timeline, forced them to deploy an untested prototype. On screen, Reeves had cleared the corridor and reached a junction. She paused, head tilting as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she turned directly toward a seemingly blank wall and placed her palm against it. The wall rippled and parted like liquid, revealing a hidden access tunnel. She's accessing systems and information that should be completely secure, Kraz said. The nanites must be interfacing directly with our technology, learning and adapting to it in real time. Vex slammed his fist against the arm of his chair. Where is she going? What is her objective? As if in answer, Reeves turned toward the camera again. Your central reactor core, Commander Duran? I thought I'd pay it a visit. Your ship has enough power to fuel quite an expansion of my capabilities, don't you think? Lock down all access to engineering. Vex shouted into the comm. Deploy every available soldier to protect the reactor. Reeves laughed, a sound made all the more disturbing by its harmonics. They can't hear you, Commander. I have isolated your communications. Right now you are speaking only to me, and anyone I choose to include in our conversation. She resumed her journey through the access tunnel, moving with inhuman grace. The camera feed switched automatically to follow her progress, jumping from one security sensor to another. You are probably wondering how this is possible, she continued conversationally. How a broken human female who should be dead could possibly threaten the mighty hegemony fleet. The answer is quite simple, really. She paused at another junction, seemingly considering her route. You gave me everything I needed. Your weapons provided the energy. Your networks provided the access. Your arrogance provided the time. What does she mean? Vex asked, turning to Kraz. The lieutenant's eyes were fixed on her datapad. Sir, I have translated more of the Lazarus files. The nanite swarm was designed to adapt to and counter any technology it encountered. When your troops fired on Commander Reeves, they provided samples of hegemony weapons technology. The nanites analyzed it, replicated it, improved upon it. And our communications systems. The same principle. Once the nanites understood our basic protocols, they could infiltrate and manipulate our networks. That's how she gained access to our ships, our systems, everything. On screen, Reeves had reached a massive bulkhead door marked with radiation warnings in the hegemony language. 2 heavily armored security officers stood guard, alerted by some warning system that had survived the communications blackout. They immediately opened fire with heavy assault cannons, weapons designed to penetrate the thickest armor. The concentrated beams struck Reeves squarely in the chest, driving her back several steps. For a moment, Vex felt a surge of hope. Perhaps the nanite suit had limitations after all. But then something new happened. Instead of simply absorbing the energy as before, the suit began to change shape. Portions of the silvery material flowed like quicksilver, forming a concave disc centered on Reeves' chest. The security officers continued firing, unaware that their weapons were now doing exactly what Reeves wanted. The disc began to glow with accumulated energy, spinning faster until it resembled a miniature vortex of light. "Thank you for the contribution," Reeves said, her voice somehow audible even over the roar of the cannons. "Allow me to return the favor." The vortex suddenly reversed direction, releasing all the stored energy in a focused beam that made the security officers' weapons look like children's toys by comparison. The blast vaporized both guards instantly and continued through the bulkhead door, melting a perfectly circular hole large enough for Reeves to step through. "Magnificent," she murmured, examining the destruction she had wrought. "The adaptive capabilities exceed all projections. I wonder what else I can do with this." As she passed through the molten hole into the reactor chamber beyond, Vex finally found his voice again. "Cut the feed," he ordered. "Shut down all monitoring systems ship-wide." "Sir, that won't stop her," Kraz protested. "It will only blind us to her actions." "I know exactly what her actions will be," Vex snarled. "She's going to use our reactor to power up her nanite abomination even further. Then she's going to destroy this ship like she destroyed the others. The only question is whether we can evacuate the command staff before that happens." He rose from his chair, drawing his sidearm. "Prepare my personal shuttle. We are abandoning ship." Kraz didn't move. "Commander, protocol dictates." "Protocol be damned. We are facing a technological threat that was never accounted for in any protocol. Our mission is a failure. The only logical course now is to retreat, regroup, and inform the Hegemony Council of what we have encountered here." The bridge doors slid open, and both officers turned, expecting to see more fleeing crew members. Instead, Commander Reeves stood in the doorway, her silvery form now pulsing with so much energy that it was painful to look at directly. "Going somewhere, Commander Duran?" she asked, stepping onto the bridge. Vex raised his weapon and fired without hesitation. The plasma bolt struck Reeves directly in the chest, adding its energy to the maelstrom already swirling beneath the nanite surface. "I have absorbed the power of your reactor core," she said, walking calmly toward him as he continued to fire uselessly. "Do you really think that little toy will make any difference now?" When she reached him, she gently pushed the weapon aside with one finger. The metal barrel melted at her touch, the liquid dripping onto the bridge floor where it sizzled and smoked. "You know what the most interesting thing about this technology is, Commander?" she asked, her featureless face inches from his. "It doesn't just adapt to physical threats. It adapts to intellectual ones as well. The more I use it, the more it integrates with my mind, enhancing my thought processes, expanding my consciousness. She turned away from him, approaching the main command console. Right now, I'm simultaneously aware of every system on this ship, every communication between your vessels, every tactic your officers are considering. Her hands hovered over the console, not touching it but somehow interfacing with it nonetheless. Displays lit up, showing the status of the entire hegemony fleet. I can feel them all, she said, her voice taking on a note of wonder. 37 ships, thousands of crew members, all connected through your communications network, all accessible to me. What do you want? Vex finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Reeves turned back to face him. What do I want? That's an interesting question. Initially, I wanted survival. When your forces attacked our facility, when your weapon nearly killed me, all I wanted was to live long enough to activate the Lazarus Protocol. She gestured at her silvery form. Then, as the nanites repaired my body and I began to understand their capabilities, I wanted revenge. I wanted to destroy your fleet as you had destroyed our cities. An eye for an eye, as we humans say. And now? Kraz asked, speaking for the first time since Reeves had entered the bridge. Now I want something more. Something better. The pulsing energy within the nanite suit seemed to calm slightly. Now I want justice. With a gesture, she activated the ship-wide communication system. When she spoke again, her voice echoed throughout the inevitable conquest and, Vex suspected, across the entire hegemony fleet. Attention all hegemony forces. Your invasion of Earth has failed. Your flagship has been compromised. Your command structure has collapsed. You have two options, surrender or be destroyed. She paused, letting the ultimatum sink in. Those who surrender will be allowed to return to hegemony space with a message. Earth is not your prey. Humanity is not your conquest. We possess technology beyond your comprehension, and we will use it without mercy against any who threaten our world again. Vex laughed bitterly. One prototype suit does not make humanity a technological superpower. Once the Council learns of this, they will send 100 fleets, each larger than mine. They will glass your planet from orbit without bothering with ground forces at all. You still don't understand, do you? Reeves said, her tone almost pitying. This was never about one suit or one soldier. With another gesture, she brought up new displays on the bridge screens. They showed feeds from all across Earth, research facilities, military bases, government bunkers. In each location, humans were activating devices similar to the one Reeves had used, their bodies being enveloped by the same silvery nanite swarms. Project Lazarus was distributed globally when your invasion began, she explained. Every major power received the prototype specifications. While you were focusing on me, thousands of others were preparing to deploy the same technology. She leaned closer to Vex. And every time one of us adapts to a new threat, every time we discover a new capability, that knowledge is shared instantly across the entire network. We are evolving, Commander. Collectively. Exponentially. The implications struck Vex like a physical blow. One human with this technology had decimated half his fleet in less than an hour. Thousands working in concert? You cannot win this war, Reeves continued. But you can end it. Surrender your forces, return to your space, and live. For a long moment, Vex said nothing. His entire life had been dedicated to the hegemony's expansion, to the belief in their inherent superiority over all other species. To surrender would be to betray everything he had ever believed. But to continue would be suicide. I cannot speak for the Council, he said finally. Only for my fleet. What remains of it? That's all I ask, Reeves replied. The Council will make their own decisions when they receive your report and witness the evidence of what happened here. Vex nodded slowly. Very well. I, Commander Vex Duran of the Galactic Hegemony's 7th Assault Fleet, formally surrender to the forces of Earth. As soon as the words left his mouth, the energy pulsing through Reeves' nanite suit diminished significantly, though it didn't disappear entirely. A wise decision, Commander. Lieutenant Kraz will coordinate the withdrawal of your remaining vessels. Any ship that takes hostile action will be immediately destroyed. She turned to Kraz, who flinched visibly. You have 3 hours to clear Earth orbit. After that, any hegemony vessel in our system will be considered hostile. Understood, Kraz replied, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. One last thing, Reeves said, turning back to Vex. When you report to your council, make sure they understand exactly what happened here. Make sure they understand why their invasion failed. And what should I tell them? Vex asked. The featureless silver mask regarded him silently for a moment. Then, with a fluid motion, it receded from Reeves' face, revealing the human features beneath. Her skin was unmarked, showing no sign of the devastating injuries she had suffered only hours before. Her eyes, however, still glowed with the same blue light that had shone through the mask. Tell them they made a fundamental error, she said, her voice now purely human again. They saw our biology and assumed weakness. They saw our divisions and assumed disunity. They saw our restraint and assumed fear. She smiled, and there was nothing warm in the expression. Tell them that humanity was never prey. We were just waiting for the right predator to come along and give us a reason to evolve. With those words, the nanite suit flowed back over her face, concealing her features once more. She turned and walked toward the bridge doors, which opened automatically at her approach. 3 hours, Commander Duran, she said without looking back. Don't waste them. As she disappeared into the corridor beyond, Vex sank back into his command chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his failure. Not just his personal failure as a fleet commander, but the hegemony's failure to understand the true nature of the species they had so arrogantly attacked. Begin evacuation procedures, he said quietly, and prepare a full record of everything that's happened here. The Council needs to know exactly what we have awakened on this planet. Kraz hesitated. Sir, the standard protocols for defeat require that we destroy all evidence of. There will be no covering up this disaster, Lieutenant, Vex interrupted. The hegemony needs to understand the threat we now face. These humans, they are not like any species we have encountered before. They don't just use technology, they become it. They adapt. They evolve. He turned his gaze toward the view screen, which now showed Commander Reeves exiting the inevitable conquest via an airlock in her nanite suit, protecting her from the vacuum of space as she propelled herself toward Earth with jets of energy emanating from her palms. We came here seeking conquest, Vex said, more to himself than to Kraz. Instead, we may have started something far worse than a war. We may have triggered the next stage of human evolution. As the evacuation alarms blared throughout the ship, Vex Duran watched the silver figure of Commander Reeves dwindle against the blue backdrop of Earth, a world that would never again be seen as weak or primitive by the wider galaxy. A world that, thanks to the hegemony's arrogance and cruelty, had discovered its true potential in the crucible of invasion. A world that would never be the same again. And neither, Vex suspected, would the galaxy that had so foolishly provoked it.